through this webinar, and it'll be the same setup as last time. So if you do have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat box, and at the end, Di will open up the floor to have any questions you might have answered. So do let us know if there's anything you'd like to know, and I'll hand it over to Di now. Thanks, Di.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everyone. How are you all today? Sorry for the delay on this lovely Tuesday morning or lunchtime in Melbourne here. So today we're going to be talking about setting up your new recruit for success. One of the key things we can do as leaders is ensure that our new people are set up for success. So what we're going to be looking at today is we need to understand firstly, what does the impact on the business and the new recruit by not investing really positive time with them. We're also going to learn and understand the Tuckman stages to group formation. We're going to follow some simple steps to induct, orientate, onboard and support your staff member throughout the whole probationary period and confidently give feedback. So for those people who are joined in on the previous session, you'll find that we are going to be giving you the feedback model again, and for the next session there again. So as they say, the more you hear things and try things, the better that you'll get at it. So you'll know the feedback model off by heart by the end of these webinars. So let's get it started. So what are the consequences of not investing in your new recruit? Well, quite frankly, you actually set your new recruit up to fail. You know, these are new people who don't know what they're doing. They're in a strange environment, and if you don't spend time with them, they're going to flounder. You're also going to let your team down. Your team rely upon you as the leader to build, drive, and motivate their team. And if you don't invest time with your new people, and your current people, of course, then you're actually letting the whole team down. You'll find that your productivity will drop within the team. You'll also find that there's increased stress on your staff, and there will be increased conflict and dysfunction. And overall, that is going to be an increased cost to the organisation. And from the work that I've been doing around recruitment and induction and performance management, it is actually noticed that for every failed recruit, it actually costs your organisation of 9 months' salary. That's a huge amount of money.
Di, that's a really huge amount of money and quite a specific amount in terms of getting 9 months' salary.
Yeah, well, let me tell you about that. So we all know that when someone is ready to resign, their level of commitment starts to drop even before they resign. So that's often a month out. Then they will hand in their notice, and for the last month that they're there, they'll spend their time using up all their sick leave, taking a few extra doona days. They'll start slacking around, milking the situation because their motivation has gone and they are now looking forward to their new role. Then, if you haven't actually recruited anybody within that time, you've got to spend that time recruiting a new person, which can then take up to a month because they need to spend that time handing in their notice.
I guess what we also don't take into account is distraction.
Oh, absolutely.
Some other people, you know, when someone has decided they're going to resign and they really do start to actively disengage, they pull people around them down with them.
Of course they do, because everybody starts mourning and, you know, wondering what the hell's going to go on when they're not there and how they're going to cope with that other person. And they keep thinking about the stress about what, you know, what's going to cause them once this person's gone. So then, of course, once you've actually got someone on board, you know, it's going to perhaps take another month for that person to come on board. Then it actually takes people 6 months to go through their probationary period and get to the level of maximum performance.
That's if you got it right first time.
That's if you've got it right first time. And if you don't get it right first time, then you've got to start that process.
And the money adds up,
and
adds
it
up.
keeps adding up and it keeps adding up. And
Yeah.
that's right. So, yeah, it's a very expensive process. So and it was interesting, you talked about just before, Sarah, about how the team becomes sort of a bit out of sync when someone leaves. So it's a really good time to show you about the Tuckman stages of group formation. Now, every single team will go through this process. So when we have a new person come into our team, we go through the forming stage. And this is where everybody's, the new person's a little bit confused and a bit concerned and a bit worried about what they're going to be doing, but you're also going to be getting to know each other. And, you might have a few little lunches and people will be lovely to each other, and, everybody's getting to know each other. It can be quite a nice stage, but a little bit nerve-wracking. And then within 3 hours, 3 days, or 3 weeks, the storming will happen. And it's usually over really pathetic stuff. It'll be that the one of the existing employees won't like the lunches that the new person's bringing in, or won't like the way they do things, or don't like the attention that they're getting from the manager, or the attention that they're getting from someone else.
And or it could just be a power difference too.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. But it's usually quite pathetic stuff, we've found. And then this little niggling starts happening, and you'll find that some of the existing team members will go off to the manager and say, this person isn't working out. And we'll start to create that real negative energy around this new person. But you know what? It's absolutely normal for us to do that. We do that in our personal relationships. If you think about your husbands or your wives or your partners, when you first got to know them, there was the honeymoon stage, and then you started niggling, and then you get to the next part where you get to norming, and you start finding an even playing field that you can all work for. It's a case of respect, understanding each other's differences, sharing and appreciate each other's strengths, and starting to work through that. Once you've worked through that, you start then performing as a team, and you really start getting results. The next stage is the adjourning or transforming, which we often call as mourning. And this is when someone leaves, and then everybody gets stressed and they get upset and they get concerned about how they're going to function. And then we start the process again. And I'm sure that all of you have actually identified these stages within your team. Can anybody identify where their team is right at this moment? Is it in forming, storming, norming, performing, or adjourning? Where's your team, Sarah? While we wait for people to put up some comments.
I'd like to say that we are forever in performing, but it's not always the case. We actually have had a change in location as well. So it's not even a change so much in the actual team, but we've had a change in our physical location and our seating arrangements. And it's so funny because I didn't even really think of it as an issue. But just the niggling that went on about, pardon me, where people are sitting, or the air conditioning, or what are we having for lunches? And it did seem, like you say, it did seem to be quite kind of pathetic things that really dangerously were or in danger of really pulling us down and kind of pulling everything apart. So we had to get people back to performing, and then moving on and just really getting back to work. Which is interesting.
It's really interesting. A lot of people can't cope with change. And they find it very, very difficult. So even a change of location can really throw people out. And that whole sitting together, who's sitting where, that causes people so much stress. It's quite unbelievable.
So we've had a question here for you, or we've had a comment here about performing. However, I find regular storming can appear when the workload becomes too hard. All are happy when the good is coming their way. That's so true.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So the moments things get tough, everybody starts to get really niggly. I always say they carry on like pork chops. But, it's just the case they just get a little bit temperamental, bit stressed, and they're not managing their stress very well.
Yeah.
So that's quite a normal stage. The thing is with all of this, when you're actually hiring someone new and they're coming into the team, I recommend you take your existing team through this and say, this is what we're going to go through. We've got a new person coming on board next week, and this is what we're going to go through. And what we want to do is get through that norming stage really, really, really quickly.
Yeah.
And, just once they're aware, you'll find that they go through the process really, really well.
And I think it's a good tool to remind us all of, because it does feel like you're just drowning, and you're like, why is this happening? And if we remember that this is normal for teams and that people are afraid of change, if we keep this in mind, then it becomes more manageable for us who are in these teams. And it doesn't seem so drastic and, why does this happen to me?
Yeah.
And, it does seem more manageable, I guess.
That's right. And look, I think we can all relate to this in our own family world as well. I always relate the story to when I've got 2 grown-up daughters, and one had left home. The youngest one was living with me, spoilt only child, loving it. When the eldest daughter came back home again, we all had a very happy time forming together for about the first week. And then week 2, the storming happened. My 2 girls actually behaved in the most disgusting way. They fought over shoes. My eldest daughter was saying my youngest daughter was lazy. They were just awful. And then they started norming. They started sharing things. They started communicating effectively. Then they started performing, going out together, being gorgeous. And then the youngest one left home and the oldest one got upset and we had to reform again. So I think we can probably see all that even happening in our personal worlds. Anyway, let's move on to this. So let's look about some terminology here. So orientation and induction is really the introduction to the organisation. Onboarding is learning the new role. And probation is the first 6 months of investing time to set up your new recruit success. So we do, different organisations use different terminology, but induction and orientation is that first day that someone comes into your workplace. The onboarding is getting them set up to do their job, and probation is their first 6 months. So let's look at induction and orientation. Now, for this day, what I recommend you do is you have your new person start 30 minutes after the normal start time. And you probably wonder why we do that. Well, actually, it's a really good idea because it means that you've got time to get into the office, sort everything out, sort everybody else out.
Get a cup of coffee.
Get a cup of coffee, feel relaxed, and you are there waiting and ready to welcome that person.
There'd be nothing worse than having someone rock up and not having anybody there.
I know, and the manager's not there. And I think it's really the manager's responsibility to be there, not just having one of the other staff members or a supervisor or a team leader. It needs to be the manager.
Yeah.
The other thing you need to make sure is that their desk, their email, their phone, their stationery, their passes, and their paperwork are all prepared. There's nothing worse than going into a new organisation and they haven't even set up your desk. You can imagine how that would make you feel. You just wouldn't feel welcome at all. And it's really, really important. So you need to be there to welcome that new recruit. Then you take that person through and you introduce them to all of the staff. Just a casual run through. Say, hi, this is Sarah. Sarah's come to us and she's going to be doing this role. Make sure you show them around the workplace, including where the toilets are and the staff room. The next process with that, after you've had a nice chat and introductions to people and really tried to make that person feel calm and relaxed, then you would conduct any kind of mandatory training. So a lot of organisations now have to do a proper online induction program, which will include work health safety and some policies and procedures. So if there's any of those things that need to be done, that gets done
Would
then.
this be where something like the Organisation Code of Conduct or first aid or
Yep.
fire evacuation?
Yes, all of those kind of things would happen there. Now, what I have noticed in a lot of organisations is that they will then leave the person to sit there and read a few of the relevant policies and procedures. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I don't think anybody actually reads them. And I know from past, I've not read them either. You know, you're so nervous, so stressed out, your concentration's not there, and people don't read them really, really clearly. So my advice is, these are really important things. Setting people up and getting them to understand what the sick leave policy and procedure is. So my recommendation is that you sit there and you talk them through it and discuss the relevant points, and then check for understanding. So say to them, so we're both on the same page, what's your interpretation of this? And get them to repeat back to them. You need to talk about certain work health safety things that are relevant for your organisation. You need to particularly talk about bullying and harassment. You need to then explain to them how they need to do their timesheets or their payrolls or any kind of special company requirements that you have. You need to explain it to them and get them to explain back to you. So then you know that they understand it. Then they can sign it off.
And I guess at this stage, there'd be no point giving them a policy to read on their own without any context, any organisational context. So this would be a good opportunity to be filling in those blanks.
Absolutely. But unfortunately, a lot of people just throw it at them, expect them to read it, and then sign off and say, okay, well, we've fulfilled our duty of the orientation and given them the right documents. So double check that they actually know what they have read. Are there any questions around that area? If anybody has any questions at any time, please don't hesitate to just type them up on the screen and we can answer them as they come through. So let's talk about the onboarding. So once we've been through all the formal organisational policies and procedures and set up and things like that, we need to then introduce our new person to their new role. So this is where you would take some time going through their job description, reiterating everything that they're clear about things. And usually most organisations set people with a buddy, set them up with someone that they can go through certain aspects of their role, someone they can just talk to, confide with, you know, checking that they're okay. As a leader and as a manager, you really need to check in on a daily basis with your new person every single day for the first week. How are you going today? I'd make sure you're there to welcome them. I'd make sure that you were there to check in on the end of the day to see that they're okay, that they're being treated okay, that they've got any questions, if there's any concerns they have, anything they've found interesting about the organisation or their role. You know, it's a time just to share with them, to make them feel comfortable and build that rapport and that relationship with that person. Once you have got through the first week, then I would check in with them, you know, every couple of days over the next week. One of the things that we need to do when we onboard people is not set them really large goals at the start. No person is going to be performing at their best until up to a 6-month period. So we set small achievable goals for them during those first few weeks and months. We need to make sure that we give them feedback and recognition all the time. And we also need to address any issues immediately. At the end of every week, let's just touch base with that person. Let's follow up how they're going.
A couple of questions have come through. Firstly, how much of the PD, the position description, would you go through in this early stage? So in terms of, you know, very specific KPIs and very specific KRAs, would you kind of dump that on them all at this stage, or would you be doing that bit by bit?
Well, what I would normally do is go through it all about, take them through their KRAs and their KPIs about what we're wanting to achieve down the track. You know, this is where we're heading towards. But at the same time, I say, but you know what, in the first 3 months, so like if you had someone in sales, for example, you would say, so what we want you to do is say for this first month, it'd be great to, you know, get 5% or 10% of that, and then we'll build it up to so much over an incremental time. Well, this week, starting off as if you've got a new person in admin, you know, at this stage, we're wanting you to start just setting up the calendar invites for people or whatever it is, but just do small things because people need to learn the process. They often need to learn new systems and get to know around your databases and things like that. So everything that they're going to do is going to be at a much slower rate. So we need to give them time to do it. So let's just focus on this week. Next week we'll focus on something else. But they just need to know what it is that we want to achieve down the track.
There's also a question that's come in about a skills analysis. So in this early time, would this be where you would be identifying any training needs or any gaps in their skills this early on?
Not on this particular day. This is just setting them up for success. What, you know, really after that first week, let's just settle them down. And then the next week, we will actually start through on the probation period. And this is where we need you to, so, you know, how you're going, let's set up probation, again, setting small goals as well, and checking what gaps there are. So we will be doing that regular skill gap analysis all the way through their probation period. What are the things that we need to address? Where do we need to fill that gap for you? So this is another area where managers fail. Managers fail to be consistent around following up and meeting with their new staff members on a regular basis. So my hot tip is, after that first week, start the probation and send monthly or weekly or whatever it is, calendar invites to that employee for the duration of their probation. So it is set in concrete in your diaries and in their diary. This is a date that can't be cancelled.
And how do you agree on the probation? Is this in the employee contract early on?
Yes. Most probation periods have now gone up to 6 months. Although there are still some at 3 months. But most employee contracts now are sitting at 6 months.
Okay, perfect. And I just had a question come in about the communication in this stage and setting up a communication model. I mean, I agree with this question. It's tricky because the manager, I mean, you do want to be in contact with the new recruit early on, but you don't necessarily then going on want to be hassled every day about everything. Am I being too harsh? You know, is there someone else they should be going to?
Or sort of through their buddy and through their team leader and things like that. But it is the manager's responsibility to manage the probation. But team leaders will be, and supervisors will be doing things from a day-to-day basis. You'd probably have a meeting with them, but it's really important for the manager to control and run the probation period. Because if there's any issues that need to be addressed, they can be addressed at those meetings. And we want to set this person up for success. So by making sure that we're really proactive with their probation period, they feel more engaged and they feel, you know, really sort of working with the culture and things like that. So let's set up some weekly invites for their probation for the first month. For the second month, I would have sort of fortnightly meetings, and then from there through to about 5 months, I would be doing monthly meetings. At the 5.5 months, you need to conduct an end of probation review and prepare the documentation for permanency or termination. We cannot, this needs to be done at the 5.5 months because if you get to the exactly 6 months and 1 day, you cannot terminate that person under probation. So if that person hadn't worked out, you cannot terminate them at that stage. So all of this has to be done prior to, and you need to have the conversation with the person prior to the end of the 6 months and put them on a permanent contract.
Is probation traditionally, I think it's maybe not done that well, because I mean, when you've gone to the trouble of recruiting someone and they're in now and they know kind of what they're doing, even if you know they're not the right fit for the organization, it's so hard thinking, oh, do I have to start again, or should I just keep trying with this person and try to get them? And we forget how expensive it could be long term if they're just not the right fit for the organization. And should we just call it quits now, scrap it, and both go our separate ways and start again? And
absolutely.
I feel like the probation is there for a reason, but we tend to waste that time.
Oh, we do. And a lot of people keep thinking, oh, it'll get better, it'll get better. You know what? You know in your gut if something's not right. And you know if a person is really, really, really struggling, then, you know, if you can see it 2 months or 3 months that they are really struggling or it's not the right fit, then you can terminate that person at that particular time. My advice is don't go doing it until you've spoken to your HR manager, all right? So don't go taking it upon yourself and say, I'm going to get rid of this person. Go and have a conversation with your manager, because that's what you need with your HR manager, because that's what you need to do.
Okay.
But you can get them, and any time up to that 6 months, you can terminate someone under probation. After that, it has to go through the normal process. Yep. So what I'm going to do now is, you know, I've harped on about follow-up, feedback and follow-up. And for those people who weren't in on the previous session, I'm going to show you the U-Butte feedback model. And basically, if you give people consistent feedback all the time, you will set them up for success. You know, you've got to think about the cost of losing someone. You've got to think of how much, you know, you as an organisation can make if you invest the time. So as you as a manager, you delegate some things off to other people in your team so you can invest the time in your new people. It's just something that's really lax in organisations this day. We get people into the role, we settle them in for the first week, and then we leave them, and then we wonder why we have a high level of turnover, why we have a high level of conflict, why we have a high level of stress. So to eliminate that, do it right. I know it's going to take a bit of time, but really, in all honesty, half an hour of your time a week. These probation sessions perhaps don't need to take an hour. It's a half an hour chat. How are you going? Yes, you've achieved that. Yes, you're doing really well. This is what we're going to do now. We're going to put you into this training, or I'll get you a coach or whatever, and move on to the next, the next session. They don't have to be a long process. It's a touch base and a documentation. So let's go into the feedback model. So we have 3 steps to the feedback model. First of all, it's the basic principles. Then it's about giving feedback, and then it's about receiving feedback. So let me take you through, where have we gone with our basic, we'd lost them. So let's talk about the basic principles. The basic principles are, firstly, you need to focus on the situation, the issue, the behaviour, not the person. And we all know that that's easier said than done, because there are some people, when they're not behaving correctly or their performance is not up to scratch, we tend to have a difference of opinion about them. So be aware of that. Really focus on the situation, issue, behaviour, not the person. When we give people feedback, the feedback is there to maintain their self-confidence and their self-esteem. This is not a time to bag people, make them feel bad about themselves, make them feel insecure. We're giving them feedback because we care and we value them and to do so. And we want to make them feel better about themselves. We also want to maintain constructive relationships. We're there to build this relationship with this person, not to destruct it. As leaders, we are also there to take the initiative to make things better. This is a two-way partnership we have, and it's up to us to be maybe a little bit more open or a little bit flexible so we can take the initiative to support that person. We also need to lead by example. So, for instance, if you're giving someone some feedback about consistently being late with reports or consistently not responding to emails on time, you'd better make sure that you're actually doing it correctly yourself. All right? Because what will happen is that people will lose trust and faith and respect in you as a leader.
So I know this is, you said already that it's easier said than done. Is this, last time you were talking about staying above the line rather than going below the line. So I guess this would be a good time to remind ourselves of when you say maintaining the constructive relationship and maintaining their confidence or building their confidence. It's actually about that rather than taking it personally and really getting angry or offended by something. You have to just stay above the line.
That's right.
And maintain this constructive place that we're in, even if they've gone well below the line.
That's right. That's right. And you know what? It's really hard. Look, we automatically go below the line when someone gives us feedback because we all like to think we're perfect. And you know what? Most of us are most of the time. However, you know, it does bruise our ego. And so it's a normal state to go into below the line. But what we have to do is look at it in the positive aspect and go above the line and say, hey, this person actually cares enough about me to give me feedback. Because if they didn't care, they would allow me to fail and I would be out the door.
And I guess what's the point of going below the line? What good is going to come?
Well, it's not nothing. Just negativity and
more stress.
More stress, and no one needs that. So let's talk about giving. And here we go. I'm having fun and games with this morning. Lunchtime. I've been on holidays. I think I'm still on holiday mode. Anyway, let's talk about delivering constructive feedback. This is a model that I have used for so many years, and I have found it so effective because I used to have the fear of giving feedback, and I would avoid it like the plague. I would run away and hope that it would solve itself. And then when I would give someone feedback, my mouth would dry up, the words wouldn't come out, I'd shake, my neck would go red, and everything would go wrong. But I was actually taught this model many, many years ago, and I love it to bits. So let's talk about it. I think the hardest part about giving feedback is the opening sentence. What do we say? Because if we go to someone and say, hey, I need to talk to you about always being late, they're going to get angry and defensive. So what we change it to is what we call conveying our positive intent. And I like to only use between 8 and 10 words with this. So an example of this is, hey, Sarah, love to catch up with you and talk to you about increasing our productivity. Sarah would go, oh, okay. Then I would describe exactly what I've observed. So Sarah, I've observed that you've been running 30 minutes late for the last 4 days. State the impact of the behaviour, 8 to 10 words. The impact of that is that's putting a lot of pressure on your team to cover for you, and we're not meeting our goals. Very clear, very concise. Then we'd ask Sarah to respond, and Sarah will come up with all sorts of stories that she'd missed the train, or, you know,
delegate my homework.
You've delegated your homework, or, you know, the kids were being sick, or the husband was being a pain, or I don't know, it could be anything. And she'd come up with these, and then we'd then talk about a solution. How are we going to rectify this? You know, in some cases it might be that there might be a certain family issue going on, and then we will need to sort that out, maybe some flexible hours or something like that. So make sure that when you give someone feedback, 8 to 10 words, set the conversation up in a positive manner, describe exactly what you've observed. Not that I've noticed you've been a little bit late, exactly what days, what times, or if they haven't produced a document or there's been an error in something, be precise and then state the impact. When people understand the why and the impact, they're more likely to change. And research has shown that 98% of people will want to change their behaviour or their ability to do something if they have been informed, so if they're aware. The final bit is when you've been given feedback, or this is a model you can use for your people, when you're giving them feedback, so it's something you can train them on, you need to focus on they need to focus on the content, not you. We want them to listen calmly and attentively and then clarify what they've said, because for sometimes what goes out of your mouth and into your ears, into their ears, can be quite different. Then we want them to acknowledge your concerns. We don't want it, this is not a time for over defending and over explaining and blaming other people. We just want them to welcome suggestions and move on. And Nadine has come up with a comment, saying that every time she gives the staff member, she cries and states that they're having trouble or they dismiss it. Yeah, this is always trouble. Some people always go into this victim mode because they don't like being given feedback. So it's about building that relationship with that person and say, hey, listen, I'm giving you feedback. One, we run an organisation. Two, I'm giving you feedback because I want you to grow and develop and to be successful. Now, if you are having trouble at home, I need you to talk to me about it, so then we can provide some solutions around that. So, they have a responsibility. If they have got problems going on at home, they've got a responsibility to come and talk to you and ask for some flexible hours, or maybe doing EAP or something like that. But if you don't know about it, then how can you help them and support them? So you can even say to them, Nadine, even under the Work Act, you've got a duty of care to support people. And if there's things going on at work or at home that is affecting them at work, we need to make sure that we're checking out for these people and offering them some kind of support or something around that. And look, what if they keep doing it, I would just snap them into line. Yeah, it's a difficult one, but I would be sitting down and having a candid conversation with that person, maybe taking them out and having a coffee and saying, what's actually going on? How can we actually help you? Does anybody else have any other questions that they want to ask before we close the session?
We have a question here around the induction, saying that part of our induction is to introduce to the wider team, not just their team, so they will often run a morning tea. Is this a good idea, or could it be too overwhelming at the early stage of employment?
Well, look, I think it really depends on the size of the organisation. What a lot of companies do is the actual team will then go and have a morning tea or a lunch. The smaller individual team would have a lunch, or they'll go out to lunch together, or they'll do something together to get to know the person. Some organisations have a welcome morning tea, say on a weekly or a monthly basis, whenever there's a whole group of people, and invite them into it. It could be a little bit overwhelming.
I guess it also depends on your organisation.
Yeah.
If you're not the kind of organisation that has birthday morning teas or lunches together, you don't want to set them up thinking, oh, this is great, we have morning tea, and it never happens again.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that the person who is the buddy, or someone goes and actually has lunch with the new person on the first day, shows them the local cafes or shows them around or whatever. There's nothing worse than being a brand new person sitting on your Pat Malone in the tea room and no one talking to you. So make sure that the team really engage that new person, and maybe you've got 2 or 3 people go and take turns in taking that person out for lunch, or going with them for lunch, or sitting with them at lunchtime so they feel comfortable. Yeah.
There's another question that's coming around, similar to Nadine, around a difficult situation in terms of feedback. And is there a rule or a model to follow around taking time out and potentially going and asking for counsel from somebody else? rather than having to give the feedback on the spot in the moment? You know, can you say this is obviously quite a heightened moment? You know.
Yep. So if you're starting to give someone some feedback and they start to get emotional, and they're getting upset or they're getting angry or aggressive or something like that, you can actually stop that session. And you can ask them, you know, so suggest perhaps why don't you go to the bathroom or just go out and get some fresh air and we'll come back and resume. If they're not okay with that, then you can reschedule it to another time. It might be that you might need to go and get some advice or some support from someone else. I wouldn't be bringing another person into it at that stage because that's really too confronting and could be deemed as bullying. So you could take some space from it and say, okay, this is not the right time. Let's just resume, but we will be resuming this conversation.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Di, again.
My pleasure.
For an informal webinar. If you have any questions coming out of this, like to speak to Di, you'd like one of us, Di, can contact you for some coaching, or if you have any questions you would like answered, please contact us right away. This presentation will be made available for you to keep as a reference, and please keep your eye out for our next webinar session that we have coming up that Di will be running. And thanks very much.
My pleasure. The next one is on performance management, taking you through the process. And if anybody is wanting any conversations or chats with me or coaching, that is something that we're just offering to you. So please make sure that you take advantage of that.
Perfect. Thanks, Di. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Done.